Hello future tech leaders, I'm Sindhuja. Based on my own experience, I know that learning the right skills can shape our future. What if I say learning was as thrilled as the tech world itself? There we go. A cloud foundation, that's exactly what you will experience. From day one, you will be immersed in the interactive sessions and expert-led courses that covers most of the widely used technologies in the zone of data science to cloud computing, which brings more light to the life of a techie. I'm so excited to help you and unlock the true potential of a technology. Well, then why to wait? Let's see what it unfolds.
Now, actually, if you look at this part, once it comes to the real world scenarios, this is where your actual conversation will begin from. Once you have understood the customer's requirement, you know who are the stakeholders on customer side. You have identified some of the major critical workloads. You have already done segregation of those workloads. Then we'll start looking at what needs to be created new from scratch and what's something that we can migrate. If you look at the options for migration over here, that is where you'll start with module number 12. As far as module 12 is concerned, it focuses on what are the options for migration. But before you start migration, you'll have to look at some of the key aspects or key questions. You need to ask the customer and understand what is their mindset, what they are looking for, how are the developers, what are the IT team over there, how educated, and what is their cloud alignment. Some of these primary questions one needs to understand. And we need to build conversation with the stakeholders. There are quite a few facts over here, quite a few rumors as well, that IT people will lose their jobs, right? Because most of the things are automatically done on cloud. Everybody from security team, compliance team will lose their job because cloud already has a lot of compliance certificates. People are by reading things and the way how cloud vendors have been marketing themselves. People are totally convinced that cloud is a magic. You don't have to do anything over there. People actually don't have any major tasks to perform once it comes to cloud-based workloads, and there are a lot of other things, right? They may be a major bottleneck for you when you are doing the migration piece. If you need their assistance, if you need their help, the only way there is to train them on what is cloud actually about, what is possible with cloud, what are things that the vendor provides, what are things which you will have to do as a workload owner, what are the tasks that one needs to perform over here, right? This clarity has to be there. One primary thing that needs to be explained is cloud is a shared responsibility model. And when I say shared responsibility model, what do I mean by this is there has to be responsibilities taken up by the customer. There will be responsibilities taken care by the vendor. And when I say customer, obviously respective stakeholders on the customer side. Now, once that clarity is there, once that basic training is being given, we'll have to cut out the marketing conversation and actually look at the implementation scenarios. When you get a buy-in from these stakeholders, and they will be your hands and legs on the shop floor to help you the actual thing, help you get the actual details and get you the right picture in terms of what is there, what is not there. Even if something has not been done in the correct way, they have managed to hide it and managed to get it working for a very, very long time. Even those things will come up, but we will have to be with them, handhold them, and make sure we take them up with a journey. Some of you have already been part of some prior cloud, that is AWS, or done some on-premises development work. You all would know what I'm talking about. There are a lot of things on customer side, because I'm not saying you have to help them doing something wrong, but I would say rather than escalating every small bit of it, some pieces will have to adjust and make sure it works smoothly. Because unless you get their help, you'll not be able to be successful in the cloud journey. That is for sure. Now, that is how I have worked with respective teams on customer side. You have to build your repo with them, and then that's where how you proceed further. Now, before you start with cloud migration, there is a framework given by Microsoft which is called as Cloud Adoption Framework, which is called as CAF. This is something which is not part of the session or not part of the architecture. This is a separate architecture all about, which is called as Cloud Adoption Framework. What I want to pick from this is, how do you accelerate adoption? Now many a times when customer wants to go for migration of applications, migration of contents, this is what I was talking about. That is stakeholder alignment. Once this alignment is being done, now comes the next step, which is migration planning. Second thing over here which I have understood. Once it comes to migration planning, there are plenty of organizations where the problem is not with IT team. IT team is well versed. Their developers have done a great job. They have created a multi-tiered application. All those aspects are being taken care of very smoothly. If things are working fine, then why move to cloud? But yes, they will have their own set of challenges in terms of scale challenges or spike challenges at times where their infrastructure was not able to scale to the required level. Development of POCs using new environment, aging out licenses that they have, aging infrastructure that they have. Yes, there will be some of these challenges. You will have to identify those challenges. Why need to go to cloud? Now, while you are doing that, one of the major challenges again over here would be, should I really trust cloud? Something which I have been working from last 15 odd years or 20 odd years. Things have been working smooth for me. But yes, there has been some hiccups to 10-15% here and there. But do I still need to move to cloud? If yes, how do I trust cloud? Something which is entirely known, starting from the cables, the sockets, the network, how it is being configured, everything I have done with my bare hands, and I know how these things are working. Now you are saying, start trusting a new environment where I don't have access to the physical aspects of it. Everything is virtualized. Most importantly, my data is being stored into some other platform. It is owned by somebody else. Are you sure? That's the best way to go ahead with. There could be a lot of questions there. One part of the training, like I said earlier, is removing the magic aspect and showcasing what are the facts. That's first. Second aspect over here would be to help them with the migration plan. If you don't trust cloud, Let's start with something which is non-critical. Say something which you have on your tape drives, certain backups that you have. Push that onto cloud. Encrypt all the information that you have. And you hoard the encryption key with you. Store it safely. Obviously, that is the must. Correct. And when you have to decrypt that information, you can go and connect to it and start working with it. Level 2. You can go for site recovery rather than having a physical site recovery mechanism. Why can't we have a cloud-based site recovery mechanism? Try for that. Now, what I'm trying to say is these small steps or basic steps that we have, this will help to build trust with the cloud environment. Once that trust is there, now you can go ahead with some of the critical workloads, 1 or 2. Start with your DevTest machines here. Have a side-to-side connectivity. Make sure your developers are working with cloud-based VMs, but in case they want to connect to on-premises data, they should be able to do that. This is how you have to go for migration planning. And this will never happen. Based on my experience, I'm telling you, this will never happen that you get a customer who says we are full gung-ho with cloud, start migrating from day one itself. It doesn't happen that way. Because even they have to make sure they sustain their current business. If they deploy complete bandwidth for cloud migration, it will be a problem for them in sustaining their current environments. They'll have to keep that in mind as well. As an architect, our responsibility is to make sure we have good knowledge of Azure. We need to have a decent amount of knowledge about their on-premises environment, about their workloads, their challenges, pain points. What is the critical aspects of the customer? Based on that, we'll have to create a plan. And this will always be in terms of phases. First phase, what will be the workloads that you have identified? What will be the steps that you're going to perform? Similarly, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. And based on my experience, I'm telling you, this is never a short-term kind of implementation. And I'm not saying this is for large enterprises, even for small enterprises or mid-size. When I say small, I'm not saying startups. When I say small, I'm saying they already have their own premises environment set up. I consider small from that perspective. These kind of users, they will have to. Even for them, I'm saying you'll have to have phase-wise migration plan. And this is a long-term perspective that you all have to look at. Like Chengna was mentioning about from a business perspective, for these kind of scenarios, if you have not chalked out a business plan for yourself, that will become a big problem. And that's what I'm saying. You have to look at from a customer's business perspective and your business as well. This is a long-term investment. And even the money which flows over here will be phase by phase. You'll have to specify that very clearly, saying that once you achieve these goals, this is a payment which I expect from you. This will be the ROI that I will help you with. These finance terms have to be very clear with the customer as well. Once that part is being done, that will be key aspects of your migration plan. I'm not sure if you have been through this. I'll share with these links. You can go through this. This is one of the good things which I found on. This is one of the lot of other good things which I found on Microsoft Azure. Documentation is about assessments. You can create a complete questionnaire with you. What to ask? What are the right questions to ask over here? Specifically from developer's perspective, governance perspective. If you don't have this questionnaire ready, you can take a help from here. Please don't get me wrong. This is not the only question that you can ask. There are many more questions that you can add over here. If something you feel is not relevant, you can remove those questions. No problem with that. Can I have the link of it? I already shared it. It's on the chat window. Thanks. Strategic Migration Assessment. This is the fourth one. Strategic Migration. Check for this. Has your business identified a compelling business region? You see each of these steps over here or each of the set of questions over here which will help you identify is the customer making a right decision or whatever are the expectations of the customer. Are they justifiable? Those things you check with these 17 to 18 questions. Are they sufficient? I'm again saying they are not sufficient. You need to add many more based on the underlying domain. But this can help you understand what is the kind of questions that one needs to ask as an architect. This is again, some part of it will be Microsoft marketing as well. You'll have to understand that. Some of these things are more generic in nature. You have to dig deeper, create more relevant questions for that. Now, some of these aspects that you see will also be targeted towards different stakeholders. You should have different categories over here like business strategy. You can't ask the business strategy question to somebody who's from an IT admin team. You have to ask CXOs only on that. In terms of discovery and assessment, these questions you can't ask to CXOs. You have to ask these questions to IT administrators. Specific business cases you have to ask to business analyst. Which of these questions are targeted towards which stakeholders? Even that will play a very crucial role. I hope that part is making sense to everyone. This and many such other aspects are part of your 3 to 4. Let's move ahead. This is in terms of documentation and what are the options available there that you can look at these resources. Now, once you have got these details, that's when you go for the next step over here, which is migration. Now, once it comes to migration, now we are by doing all this exercise, at least the first part is clear. Why customer is migrating? Is it something which is a doable aspect? It is something which there is an agreement between the migration service provider and the customer. That is, between us and the customer. There are no unwanted expectation or unrealistic expectation setting. that comes with this part is being clarified. Now, once that part is clarified, then you go to the next step here, that what needs to be migrated in that particular phase and how to do that. Why part is clear. Now comes to what and how. When you're doing that, you'll come across a scenario where you have two members over here. That is server migration, and next is database migration or data migration. Once it comes to your resources over here, you need to identify which of these resources needs to be migrated. Data migration. I don't see any other option there. Option instances. If there is a data within a database or data within NoSQL members or file shares that has to be migrated, there is no option there. Vis-a-vis, if you look at server migration generally, Subhash as an individual, what I want to do is, when I say server, it is 127 GB disk which I am talking about along with that respective data disks. That's why that I have what are the size of that. What I would first want to do is, I would first want to understand, is it essential to migrate everything, or can I have a workaround where I just migrate the application content and avoid server migration? If it is a web application or a specific application server, I have many templates available on Azure. I can go to Marketplace if need be, that it minimizes my effort in migrating the entire server. I hope you agree with me. Yes, Subhash, all good. Instead of migrating on 27 GB, if I can migrate 20 GB or 30 GB of the application content and I have readily available VM with me, that solves my problem. But still, if there is a scenario where I feel that no, it's not working that way, there is no template which is anywhere closely matching to what my environment is. There's some custom environment, something which I have done special, which nobody else has done. Or the versions which I am using are pretty older versions. Those versions don't exist in the marketplace, which is a possibility. In these scenarios, the only option I see is server migrate, which is migration of virtual machines. In terms of virtual machine migration, I can migrate from any of the existing environments. I'm not saying vWare and hypervisor are the only two virtualization strategies when it comes to on-premises. There will be many more of them. There could be VirtualBox at times. There could be Syscode-based vMans on times. There will be a lot of other formats. As part of this course, we'll have to focus on one or two members which are most commonly used. The most commonly used members that we have is VMware, vSphere, vCloud. These are the options available. Second one that we have is hypervisor, which is Microsoft technology. These are two basic aspects that we'll see as part of this module. Along with this, there are other members over here which can help you do the migration. You have agent-less migration. You have agent-based migration. I'm not sure if you're aware about this. If you go to Azure Compute Options, if you go to Azure Compute Options here, there is an option for Azure vMan, this one Azure VMware Solution. You can migrate your VMware virtual machines over here. And you can also have dedicated cloud infrastructure for VMware on Azure. VMware also is not a big problem now. And this, I'm not sure if you are aware about this. This has been there for the last 6 months. What do you mean? Basically, I have seen that while migrating, we have got the Azure Migrate, which helps to migrate the VMware vSphere of the servers, the databases, the app, and the storage. What is this? What difference is this? That's why I highlighted the speciality over here. It when you do VM Migrate. VM Migrate actually converts all your VMware images into hypervisor-based images. It will convert or translate everything using a tool to hypervisor-based images. VSD-DIX. When you are using Azure VMware solution, here what we are doing is, even when we are migrating, it's still a VMware solution. It's not a hypervisor solution, which means I can go to and through, which means I can upload or I can migrate to Azure using that. I can migrate to Azure my VMware solution and I can also get it back. Which means it still remains the same native format of VMware. It doesn't convert to the image doesn't convert to the not Azure image, but the local Linux or Windows version. Whatever is a VMware native format, that format. We'd not VDHX collect. You are got it. That's what I saw, that VDH is the latest version. Got. Now I got it. That is the advantage of using this solution. But still, that's not part of the course right now as part of 3.2, and it is telling you what is available. Right. There are many organizations who would not want to convert their resources into hypervisor-based resources. They would want to still continue with VMware format for whatever reasons, whatever is the purpose they would want to serve with that. Like how we have System Center. Similarly, you have something called vSphere and vCloud, which means there is a complete data center by using VMware solutions. For them, it will become easier if they migrate VMware to a VMware native solution. And this is a service which Microsoft is giving recently. The Hyper-V you're talking like, is it a Microsoft VM solution? Yes, it is. System Center Hypervisor or Hyper-V. If you see, this is Microsoft solution. Again, please be careful. The cost of VMware on VMware Cloud on Azure or VMware solution on Azure will be costlier because that is something which they are offering as a separate solution. It's not within their existing solutions. A cost will be another factor there. Let's move ahead and let's look at what is there in this curriculum and what are the options available here. If you look at the something which I have already spoken about, that is assessment, migration optimization, and final security. We by now know what are the options available for other resources. Assessment is something which is talking to your stakeholders, understanding the workloads. Now, when you are migrating, you have to first check out what is there on their on-premises event. Do they have VMware machines? Do they have hypervisor? If you are not that great in luck, you'll have your physical servers. And I'm not referring to rack servers over here. I'm referring to high-end machines that they have. Physical servers which they want to migrate. Or they would have some of the devices like ASN storage, NAS storage which they want, which your customers would want to migrate. Right? Or there could be other virtual machines where the format itself is not supported. You'll have to translate or convert that into the Azure understandable format. In terms of VMware migration, now the reason why this module focuses majorly on VMware is, like I said earlier, there will be number of customers, or after hypervisor, if I say percentage wise, there are more than 40% approximately. Wherever people have virtualization, they have been going on to VMware. Right? People who are from Microsoft background, around 8% of them have gone to Hyper-V and they have been using System Center. Right? It totally depends upon what is the kind of environment that you're looking at. Lot of members, lot of my observation telling you, lot of people who have been from open source background, Linux background, all of them have gone to VMware. All of them, they have gone to VMware. Secondly, VMware does not require an OS. I'm not sure if you are aware about that. You can directly install VMware on the hardware, which is not an option for Hyper-V. Hyper-V requires Windows OS. On top of Windows OS, you can install Hyper-V or you can install System Center. But for VMware, it does not matter. It just needs a physical machine. On that physical machine, you can have VMware directly being installed. And on top of VMware, now you start building. Now you start creating Linux machines, Windows machines as SV, M, whatever you want. That's another reason why the majority of them have gone to VMware. Now what we're trying to do is budge. This morning I was working on migrating from AWS to Azure. And I was working on migrating from VMware to Azure. I got stuck with on-prem servers. I was able to deploy and then do all the stuff to migrate. Is there an option that we can install a VMware vSphere on our Windows for the free version? Do you have that where I can create servers inside? Or you should be having a license. As far as V3 machines are concerned, it should allow you to install VMware on your system on your virtual machine, which is a Windows virtual machine. Your V4 version on my desktop. No, on your desktop. I'm not referring to your desktop. I'm saying on Azure environments. You're saying you want to install it on your machine, vSphere. My goal is to practice migrating VMware to Azure. Now I'm deploying. That was my goal this morning. I'll take this up because I have not done this earlier. In my case, what I had done is I already have a rack server within my office. What I had done is I had installed VMware on that rack server physical machine. From there, I have done migration to Azure using ASR. I was trying to practice ASR this morning. I got stuck with how do I deploy and recognize a VM on-prem server. That's where I got stuck. I'll share a lab with you on that. You can work with that. But it is again not with VMware. It's with hypervisor. Does it matter? I can help you with that. It does matter. But using AS with ASAP, that's fine. Even I get a lot of customer requirements today saying that can you help us with that? I said I have experience, but currently due to this COVID situation, I can't go to office and set up all these things on my physical machine. The physical rack server, that's a challenge. But I have done this in the past. But you don't have to go to a physical server, right? Subash, at this point of time, you can connect and you can install the serverless also. You've got VM Migrate with the serverless services. You can do it right now, right? You really don't have to install anything, and we can still recognize the servers and understand the configuration and still move it right. What I was saying is I have to set up that environment, VMware environment, because we did it for a POC. We don't have the actual VMware setup. That's why I'm saying because being a consulting team, we don't have all these environments ready. As far as the POC requirement, we build that environment, showcase the customer how it will work. What will be the steps over here then? Actual setup is on the customer side. Got. If you look at the VMware migration, like China rightly said, you have agentless migration, agentless replication, and you have agent-based replication. Now, this is very, very crucial. What I had done when I was working a year ago, I was working on an agent-based replication. Once you install this agent on those respective VMs, it simply puts a check mark on that, saying that these are the machines which are eligible to be migrated. And in the migration process, it will show up as a separate set of resources there. There are certain restrictions that you need to take care while you are doing migration in terms of how many disks they have, what is the kind of operating systems that you have right now. Windows OS, Linux OS, right? Check for those members. These are certain things that we check for. If you look at the steps over here in terms of agentless versus agent-based communications, agent-based migration here. If you look at your agent-based migrations, here we need to migrate your appliances. In terms of agent-based, you don't have to set up a lightweight appliance. This appliance basically is like a separate server. Just give me a minute. Here what we're looking at, if you look at the first point over here, in terms of number of settings that we are doing on the server and the VM, that will be still there. The only change over here that you see is you have a lightweight appliance which is being installed for agentless. As far as agent-based is concerned, I'm not sure if you have worked with Mars Agent, Microsoft Azure Recovery Services Agent. Just like an agent which has to be installed on every machine. While I was working on resources, I had installed this service called Mobility Service. With Mobility Service, What advantage you get is, like I said earlier, it will identify which machines are planned for migration. Whereas, once it comes to appliance, you don't have to install mobility service. Once you install this appliance, what you're saying is, we have identified the machines manually and will be whichever machines we select. Those machines need to be migrated. In terms of replication settings, all those steps are as it is. The only aspect over here, or the only change which I see, is whether you want to use mobility service or you want to use a lightweight appliance. These are the two primary aspects that will change over here. If you look at the next step over here, set up appliance on VMware. This part is actually done by your mobility service. When you install mobility service there itself, you specify the entire configuration, saying that this is the configuration within my on-premises environment. These are the machines which I want to move on to Azure. Those decisions you would have already done over here in mobility service. What is the storage account which I have on the other side? All those details you have to mention there. If you look at your VMware migration, this is what Microsoft has been pushing very extensively. The reason being a lot of people who are on VMware, the next obvious migration option for them has been AWS. Even keeping that kind of perspective in mind, Microsoft always wanted to showcase people that no, there is no problem as far as VMware is concerned, like how hypervisor can be moved easily. Even VMware solutions or VMware machines can be moved. There's no issues over there. If you look at hypervisor as part of hypervisor, one of the best options that we have is going for migration with whether you're looking at hypervisor or system center for that matter. In both these scenarios, the migration option will be using your Mars agent. You can have agentless as well, or you can have host-based migration. If you're using something like System Center Virtual Machine Manager, again, please don't get me wrong, it is not a compulsion. If it is there, we can make use of it. It's not a compulsion that everybody should have System Center because it's not a cheap solution as well. It's a very, very expensive product, but there are a lot of people, and if I put it that way, a lot of organizations which have data center and a fairly complex data center. The easiest way for managing those things would be using System Center. Right. I hope this makes sense for everyone in terms of why VMware. Why much focus on VMware versus hypervisor? Because what Microsoft is saying is by covering these two options, VMware and hypervisor, we are able to address more than 60 to 70% of the market where these virtual machines are existing. 30% to 4% will still be there. There will be another way of catering to them. If you look at your bare metal services, yes. Bare metal or other mechanisms of other products, yes. Because once you look at virtualization, there would be many other products. How VMware and hypervisor, how are they not taking the business? Because everybody's moving away, right? Correct. I'm not sure about VMware or Microsoft. I can tell you Microsoft has stopped any further production on System Center. They have come up with a new solution called Azure Stack. As far as Azure Stack is concerned, Azure Stack will help you with very minimum solution within your on-premises environment, where people have still stuck to on-premises Active Directory or ERP, some CRM solution on-premises. For that, bare minimum resources, whatever they have 30% or 20% on-premises, how to survive with that and make sure also you have integration with Azure Cloud. That is what is Azure Stack. VMware, I'm not sure about if they have any similar kind of solution. What I have again, I have heard about it. I don't have perfect news on this, that this entire Google Cloud that you see, which has come up the underlying environment, is taken care by VMware. The principles of marketing and all those things is taken care by Google, but the underlying infrastructure which is being built is using VMware. Because see, not just that, not just VMware. And even if you look at somebody like Rackspace or many companies which have been into hardware business or who has been, I'm not saying hardware, sorry, wrong point there, data center management business, the only way for them to survive is to tie up or align with some cloud provider. There's no other option. You deploy your complete team for managing a data center. Just to quote an example, in India, if you see, the entire Microsoft data center is managed by TCS. All TCS employees who are data center specialists, all of them are now working for Microsoft. That's what has happened for because I know my specialty area right. Whoever has to survive further, even cloud providers, if they have to grow, they will have to set up their centers every now and then at every place. And they will need data center administrators. People with that kind of skills have moved there. Does that answer your question? Yes, it does. If you look at agent-based migration, some of the primary things which will be required, and this is again for a VMware environment, where you require configuration server, process server, and mobility service. Now, these are two things which is missing in the list which was being shown over here. That's why I said this configuration will be already done. Who does that configuration? The configuration is done by these two members, configuration server and your process server. Configuration server will actually let you know how many VMs are already existing, how many VMs you can create, what are the IP addresses which are already being used within the virtual network on the Azure environment. How do you create a VM IPs or check for the IPs that they don't overlap? All these things will be taken care by the configuration server, which will help you for centralized management. How much of migration is being done? How much of it is being pending? All that status you will see in configuration server. In terms of process server, as the name suggests, this is something which is taking care behind the scene while the data transfer is happening. In terms of mobility service, this is basically an agent which runs on these machines. What you'll have to do is you have to identify the machines, like I said earlier, phase 1, which machines you are migrating. Once you have identified that, install mobility service on that, and once you have configured it, then you start doing the migration. Sorry, before you install mobility service, you have to install the latest OS patches, otherwise it will not consider it. Some of these things have to be done before the installation of mobility service. Here, if you see the options for communication, you can use HTTP, HTTPS, which has been there for very, very long. The new thing that has emerged is ExpressRoute. With ExpressRoute, such kind of migrations have become much, much faster. Earlier, this option was not there. Earlier, when I say, I'm telling you around 1.5 years or 2 years ago, this ExpressRoute option was not there. This has been newly added, and by this Microsoft has reduced the cost of ExpressRoute, and adoption of ExpressRoute has increased pretty extensively. This was a quick understanding of what are the steps that to be performed over here. Let's go to the next section here, which is quick question, Subesh. I was reading somewhere the ExpressRoute. We cannot instigate with ExpressRoute. Directly write to the on-prem to Azure. Some other third-party services have to be. Yes. In India or any place. What I understand is you have a number of telephoning service providers or telecommunication service providers. You can take their help. They will help you. First of all, they already have their setup with respect to data centers. If not, they will help you establish a connectivity between your environment to their environment and from their environment to the data center. That's how it works. And this is what we have done at our office premises using Airtel. Site to site is better or ExpressRoute, which is cheaper. Or site to site, we don't have to do it directly. We can use the general internet. How much data do you have and what is the timelines for migration? That will totally answer this question. Let's say 16 terabytes. And how much time you have? Just say disaster recovery site. Now these guys are trying to set up a DIRA site. Out of 16, probably like 10 to 12, they have application as AS and PAS. But for SS, they're not going to do anything. PAS they have, probably around 11 to 12 terabytes, I think they have. They want to set up a DR site. How much is the total data generation on a daily basis? 16 TB you're talking about is already data, already existing data, right? Existing data. They have vCenter. And I don't think they have got a lot of generation. It's a lot of junk sitting there in their servers. Don't go for ExpressRoute. I would recommend instead go for Databox or go for import-export service. ExpressRoute is recommend. I would recommend ExpressRoute to people where they have lot of data which gets generated on a daily basis. And they don't generate a lot of data. If it's one-time data, go for import-export service. Go for Databox as a service. That's much cheaper as compared to ExpressRoute. Send your data to Azure. They will upload data to your storage account. Access it. When you say data center, what we are also referring over here is there is large amount of content which generates on daily basis, and we need to keep sending that information to Azure. What I'm trying to tell you is there are a lot of such things that we need to take decisions based on the parameters and what would be the best. My question to you is the data box, data disk and data box heavy always. It's one time usage, right? I mean, they just don't have it. They want to test for the audit reasons. They have to test the DR purpose. It is not a time-taking process like data box. Yes, it is a time-taking process and I never said no to it. What I'm trying to tell you is, if it is one time, data got it. That way, I'm saying only the existing storage, like the data. Second thing, that we go ahead in the suggestible solution data box for the DR setup and DR testing. No, I never said DR solution is a data box. That was my vision. The solution is data box, or the migration data box got it. Now my question was, solution is D. Are you still have to go for ASR as your site recovery? That's the only option correct. If anything goes down in your on-premises environment, how do you initiate machines on Azure and transfer the next set of requests on that? ASR is the only solution, not the migrate. Migrate, we can have several solutions. This is one time. That's right. Got. See one more thing, China and others. Please don't get me wrong. No. It's not a straightforward process. It involves. If you go to a doctor today, which I recently have been doctors, and the reason, the way you reach there and say 3 pills, red, green, blue. 3 times a day, and you should be. Same doesn't happen to me anytime. It never happens that way, right? They will say, do this test, do that test, go to the specialist, go to that specialist. They will give you a series of instructions for that. That's the same thing. What happens in solution? Unless you ask those many number of questions, unless you have clarity on that, you cannot suggest a solution. But yes, step 1 over here is to know what are the options available. Once you know the options available, then you can understand this is a problem. There's a stomach ache. There's a headache, right? For headache, what is the kind of medicine which is required? That way, you have to craft out your solution accordingly. There is no one state solution like it's a permanent combination. If that is the way, then you would not be sitting here every morning to us, or every evening, every night to us. It's not that simple and straightforward. That's why they need us. That's right. And this is something which they have, I would say this applications or the mess that they have created for last 20 odd years or 15 years. It's not that simple to move ahead. Now they are stuck. They had been finding out ways and means of doing workarounds, but now. When there's a scalability challenge or SLA requirements or SLA expectations from the customers, from their own team members, they have been raised questions. Now they're not able to answer. The only way they have forward is they are looking up to you. Please help us move it to cloud. We can reorganize some of these things. We can correct those mistakes that we have done in past, and we should be able to work with these resources easily. I think we can cut short at least like 60 to 70% junk we can delete, right? Put them in the archive mode and they don't have to pay for it. I totally agree with you. Many a times, they don't even know what this data is meant to do. That's why assessment over here, which I said earlier, assessment will take a lot of time. An assessment you have as an architect or as a solution provider, your questionnaire will be it has to be very, very pinpointed, very, very straightforward, cutting. Say that. Why is the data required? Tell me that. What was the last date when it was being modified? Who are the possible users of this data? Is it part of a compliance requirement? Is it part of a security requirement? There are a lot of information which are interpreted. Do we have a decryption key for that? Believe me, out of 16 TB, I may be wrong with that. 16 TB of data, you may finally realize only 4 TB is actual data. Rest, everything was done for some purpose which nobody even remembers. People leave the organization and they don't even know what this is meant to do. Sublas was a consultant who came earlier. He was working for us. He asked us to take back up 3 copies. Now is it required? I don't know. There are a lot of things which will happen that way. Cleaning up of that, environment assessment is something which is very, very important and will take time. Because people don't want to open up. That's one. Second is they don't even know at times why is it required. Who has created it? They don't have an idea on that. I have been to places where there are at least 4 to 5 backups of a single data. And all the data is at least 3 years old. A lot of these questions have to be asked as part of assessment to get the actual picture. And then you will be able to do the actual migration. One more thing. What happens generally is when you say that this is the amount of data which we are not able to figure out. Lot of questions. Don't worry, just migrate. We'll see that later. Please tell them the cost as well. You tell them the cost as well. That even if you ask me to do this data movement, I'll do that. This will be the cost for it. Per TB, this is the cost. Say chosen. I'm just throwing in hypothetical number. Are you with it? Let's think. Then think and tell me. When you tell them the cost, then they will start thinking. Otherwise, they say, how does it matter? Just move everything. But please tell them the cost as well. We are consuming and it's not just cost. The bandwidth could be part of the current work that is happening. Your existing customers, they may suffer. Your people who are working on that may suffer. And with the COVID period, everybody working from home, bandwidth is very, very crucial. You can't start pushing all the junk to cloud. Don't do that. Take time if need be. Do the Bitcoin assessment and tell me what is the actual data which you want to move. If you think it will take some time, pick up certain workloads which are specific to phase 1. Just focus on that. Give me clarity on that, and then for other workloads, we'll do it in phase 2. That will give you time. That will also help me picking up the data from the first phase and moving that, showing you how it is working. And some part of your processes can get started getting automated. Do it phase by phase. That has worked for me in many cases. And it need not be that the first phase has to be very, very large and significant. Not necessary. Small steps are to start with. Moving further with agentless migration. Here we said, as part of agentless migration, you will have to install an appliance. As part of this appliance, what we are supposed to do is we are supposed to create these resources for agentless migration. We have to check for permissions over here. What is the server requirements that you have? What are the port access requirements that you would have? Now all this information will be coming from your IT teams. What servers they have? What is the kind of workloads that they have created? Do they have required licenses? Now this is a very, very big issue which comes when you look at migration. And talking especially in terms of India. Here, once you go to people, once you go to organizations, there are still a lot of them who have Windows 2008 or even older licenses. And all of them are, what do you say, free trial or cracked kind of licenses. And they never had to do anything with it. Because all these things was being taken care of by their internal team. All their software was running fine on that. But now, once it comes to now, the business size has grown. And the only option for them is to migrate. And once they are now looking at migration Microsoft, I'm not sure how many of you are aware about this. There is something called SAM initiative. Software audit. Software audit processes. They were checking for how many companies have older licenses. I know about that. Now Microsoft has stopped that initiative. It says we don't want to go behind SAM initiative. Now, what we want to do is we want to help people to migrate. Now, if anybody who has to migrate, they will have to have a new license. Or you create a VM which is with license. Whichever way you prefer. If you want to do data, if you want to do migration, VM migration, which means you need to have latest version, latest license. Or you go for a license which is available on Azure, that is VMs with licenses. You have to check for the entire network. What are the ports being opened? All that information is available here. In terms of what are the resources required from on-premises, which portions should be open. Again, it does not contain all the information. There will be a lot of other non-Microsoft applications, third-party provided resources. Even those things have to be taken care, which is not being mentioned here. Right? That is something that we will have to work as consultants, whether the third-party license which has been procured, can it be migrated to Azure? Generally, my experience has been, there has been no major concern there. People have been able to move their licenses, to Azure Cloud or any other cloud. Another example that you see over here. Another solution that you see over here like Follow All 2 or any such security-based solutions. They say that to why are you migrating this entire machine? You don't need to do that. Just go to Azure Marketplace. We already have a pre-existing VMan there. You just create a BUL machine and put this license key over there. It will work. Now tell me what is easier for you. Migrating 127 GB of firewall solution or creating a VM on Azure. License. Anyways, they are providing you the facility to migrate that. Config file is just move that config file there. A lot of places. You don't have to migrate. That's what I'm telling you. To first understand what are the resources here and are there workarounds which will avoid that migration. Data. I'm sorry, data I can't help you, but other applications I can help you because that's where you have pre-existing resources and you can talk to respective members over there. Now, after understanding all this conversation, now let's come to the tool over here. As far as tool is concerned, here you have Azure Migrate Server Migration Tool. As part of this tool, you have our assessment finding out. Like I said earlier, two of them, if you see migrate servers, and then is migration of database. You have your web apps migration, your data box migration. If you look at your migration of web applications, this is actually not a server migration. This is actually migrating the content that you have inside your web server, AS server or Internet Information Services or any other web server that you have virtual directories that you have that content. You can migrate over here. As far as large data is concerned, like Chinder was mentioning about in his scenario, we can go for a data box over here. First step that you see is discover, assess and migrate servers. In terms of assessment, you'll have to check. In this assessment, what it checks is how many of these machines have latest licenses, what is the size, how many data disks they have. Is there anything called as read disks over here? All that information, all that verification is being done over here. Again, if you're looking at agent-based or agentless, it will check if that agent has been installed or not. If you're looking at agentless, it will not worry. You don't have to worry on that. If you're going for agent-based migration, it will ensure you have a MAAS agent or mobility service being installed on those machines. There are a number of pre-existing tools that you have. There are a lot of migration tools that you can check for. CloudFoundation Azure Migrate Server Assessment. In my case, if I recall, what I was using is Cloudin. Cloudin as a tool for checking for a lot of these options. There are plenty of other tools as well that you can check for. If you look at your Azure Migrate now, this is what is happening is if you see this process. This is a process where you initiate from Azure, connect to your on-premises environment and then perform the migration. The second approach over here could be go to your config manager. Remember, we have installed configuration manager, process manager. Now for doing it again, it is not magic. You'll have to go to your ASR and there you have something called as infrastructure setup. As part of infrastructure setup, it will ask you to download an OVA file which is around 120 GB, something like that. It actually has the configuration of all those versions. You have to download that OVA file within your environment, install that, and once you install it, it will automatically run these processes behind the scene. That is your config server, process server, and then you have to install mobility agent on the machines that you want to migrate. If you're going for agent-based migration, once you have done that part, using the configuration manager itself, you can do the migration. Are you getting it? From the local environment, you can start the migration, which is from on-premises to Azure. This is the Azure to on-premises. Both the ways will work. Start a problem with that. Here, it becomes easier for you to track this. You have more options for the tools over here, which is not there when you go to the configuration manager. Here you can use separate tools for assessment. It will check, for it will scan the complete environment, and then you can go ahead with replication over here. While you are doing this migration, it will check for whether you have. This is for when you say on-premises appliance, which means this is your agentless implementation where your appliance has a public IP. Please understand this. Without having a public IP, you will not be able to identify this over here. We should be able to understand and work with existing resources. Once you have identified your appliance will give you all the information. It will scan the complete environment, how many machines you have, what is the details within those machines. It's like an agent itself, but this agent is not installed on the individual machines. This agent is installed on the environment. It will help you scan that processes and get you details in terms of whatever machines do you want. Once you have got these machines, then you can go ahead and select as part of phase 1 which machines you want to migrate. You can create these resources here. Specify what will be the members on Azure environment, their target settings, your virtual network. It will check for all the required licenses. Whether you have a pre-built, pre-existing license. Now here, one of the common questions is once we are migrating, don't we already have a license with us? Now again, this depends on scenario to scenario. Let me look at the first scenario. First scenario which I mentioned earlier, when you're doing the migration, customer does not have new license. They have an older license. If they have an older license, some of these things will fail when you are trying to do a migrate. Because it will not allow you to install the mobility service. Second member over here is when you are installing these resources, when you are doing this migration, even if you have, say, license 2012 onwards for Windows Server, right? In those scenarios, whether your licenses is part of software assurance, please be careful. It has. Your licenses have to be part of software assurance. Only those licenses can be migrated. Other licenses can. Am I making sense for you all? This is primarily in terms of licenses, which are software-based licenses. If you have a software-based license, you have to make sure they support migration. You can check for a vendor, especially in case of Windows Server licenses. I can tell you that. Once we are clear with this, specify the compute settings. Now this part, I have already mentioned earlier. Once it comes to compute settings, whenever you see machines over here in your own premises environment, they are always over-provisioned. Your machines that you have is always over-provisioned. Why am I saying that? Because in on-premises environment, my observation, I'm telling you, whenever people purchase machines, they don't purchase for immediate requirement. They will purchase it for next 5 years. Do you agree with me? Reason being, anyways, it takes me a lot of hard work to get the sanctions from all departmental heads, finance head and all. There's an entire bureaucracy that I have. If I'm getting something, if I'm getting approvals, at least let me get approval for a higher configuration. Because now, if it is not working there, if the software doesn't work, there's some problem. I can't go back again after 2 days of saying that I want to increase the machine, get to a new machine, or I would want to add a RAM or CP. You hear. Right. I will always go for over provisioning. In these cases, once it comes to cloud, you need to many cases, I'm telling you, I have gone ahead with half of the current resources because, and again, that decision has to be taken. That decision has to be taken based on how much is the current consumption. Through profiling and through other reports, you'll come to know whether the current consumption of resources is 20, 30%, 40%, or it is going to 80%. If it is going to 80%, which means I'm wrong, I'll have to provision more resources on cloud. Right. It could happen because that was the problem area, critical workload, why customer wanted to go for cloud in the first place. Are you getting it? Most of your assessment in terms of performance will get you that information, will get you that details. Once you have specified these details, specify your disk options, disk settings, and once you're done with that, you start the replication process. Once it is done, it will show you how much data has been migrated. It will first migrate the contents, the storage, the VHD file, or the complete details that you have. If you're moving a VMware machine, it will translate that into VHD. Right. And that will take slightly longer. It does not take that much time, but it takes slightly longer than a normal VHD or a normal hypervisor setup. And once that replication is done, you go ahead with migration. These steps will help you. So, this morning I was testing, from AWS to Azure. I have installed the appliance server and I have installed the software. And when I was trying to discover from Azure, like it was spinning and spinning for hours together, and it did not discover, and it did not throw error also. And then I ended up, shutting down AWS servers because like I have to take T2 Medium to install the appliance software and other software. Got any idea in there was no error also. There was no error also. I have not worked with AWS. I think Arjun should be able to help us with that. Actually, I have not worked either. I am the one who worked on AWS. I did work on Azure. But the discovery did not happen at the Azure end. It was like no when we discovered that's where it did not happen. I have to check for that because the on-premises environment, I have been able to do it multiple times, but across cloud I have not done it. I'll have to check for that. There are any common known issues or what could be the problem there? I'll check this up. Thing. Did you check for the logs? I did check for the logs. It did not give anything. Let me try it again tomorrow. Let me also check. If I have anything, I'll discuss that. In terms of other resources that we need to check for once it comes to your Azure environment, could be services like a service bus or any kind of application communication between environments. If you have gateway setup being done for past services like logic apps, right? Your log analytics, like I was mentioning a moment ago, whenever something is getting created or discovery happening, we can go ahead and check for log analytics, or even for that matter, check for activity log. What is the activity happening? Even if something is failing or taking time, activity log can help us understand what could be the areas where the problem is happening. In terms of encryption decryption, we can make use of Azure Key Vault services. In terms of migration, once the migration is being done, you can check for those migrated servers, log into that. See if all the data is being migrated correctly. See if everything is working fine. You may begin with 1 or 2 machines to start with. Can you see this? Discover servers is 442, out of which 6 has been selected for migration. For replication, 1 has been successfully done. Check for how the migration has happened and whether all the contents are appropriate over here. Once you have checked these resources, associate a public IP over here. See if you are able to log in, or if you want to connect using Bastion service. You can do that without having a public IP. The purpose here is to check if the data is being migrated correctly. And once that part is being done, we are through this process. In terms of agent-based migration, all the steps will remain same. The only change over here that you will see is, like I said earlier, downloading the OBOA file, installing mobility service on each of these resources. That will be the change over here. If you look at the VMware preparation, if you look at another set of components in terms of security, here you have your key vault. As part of your key vault resources, this is the primary member where it handles 3 basic aspects, which is certificates. Certificate is one important aspect. Second is your secrets. And third is the encryption, decryption keys. Now those components will be part of your resource over here in Key Vault. Now using these resources, and what else we are doing is other aspects. Over here is providing permissions for the user who will be behaving as a migration user. In terms of replication, what is the strategy? That you want to go for full replication, whether you want to go for failover, failback. This actually failover, failback is not part of migration strategy. This is actually part of your site recovery. Here, the only option that one should go for right now is full replication. But if you see this member, that is Azure Site Recovery. Azure Site Recovery can be used for different purposes. It is used for disaster recovery scenarios. It can also be used for migration. In this scenario, if you see, it is showcasing how ASR can be used for replicating or vman migration from on-premises environment to Azure environment. This is something which I already mentioned about installing mobility service. Once you have installed this and you run your migration tool, it will check all the members which have mobility service installed on it. Once that part is being done, you'll have to download this application, that is OBA file. Configure that within your VMware. This will help you get all the required DTS for configuration server and process server. Once this OBA file is being configured within your on-premises environment, you will have to associate this with your Azure environment. What it does is behind the scene, it establishes connectivity with your Azure environment. Once that part is being done, go to specific machines, boot into those machines, install mobility service. This will restart your systems. And once you run this again, once you do the discovery again now, it will start checking for all those machines which has mobility agent being installed. Now there is no additional cost for mobility agent installation. What you are being charged over here is amount of data that you are sorry. It is charging for the bandwidth that you are using for transferring data. Once you have moved these resources, check what is the environment. You have VMware, vSphere environment or hypervisor environment. Check for type of machines that you have. Now, whatever I have been talking about in perspective of OBA file, that is entirely true with VMware. This is not applicable for hypervisor machines. This is your file, which is 12 GB file, and this is OVF file. Are you trying to correct it? Is an OVF file. Now, with this OVF file, everything that is required for configuration association with Azure, everything is inside this OVF file. Right. These are the screenshots of what steps need to be performed. Chitna, I'm sure you have already done these steps into your AWS environment. I did it. I want to do the VMware. Do you do it using VMware on AWS or? No, actually I have installed instances. I have created 3 instances, one appliance instance, one Windows instance, Linux instance. I have created 3 of them and I discovered them. Right now, you have taken a Windows environment on AWS. Am I correct? I did the Linux also. I did both. I did both. Let me check for that. What could be the issue in terms of discovery? Once you are done with this, all other steps will remain same. In terms of replication, migration, all the other steps will remain same. Right. Specifying what machines you want to select, what is the number of CPU cores or what is a disk, what is a RAM that you would associate. All those things will remain same over here. Some of these steps are common between agent-based migration and agent-less migration. Once you're done with this, do a test migration and verify whatever contents have been migrated, whether they are working properly or not. And finally, do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.